Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Walking with Jesus through the Passion Week. Today is Good Friday. You know, there is nothing visibly good about this particular Friday. It's actually the worst day in human history. Yet it's on this terrible day that God brought about His wonderful plan of salvation. It's the worst and the best day of all. Mark chapter 15, verse 1 says, "As soon as it was morning, having held a meeting with the elders and scribes and the whole Sanhedrin, the chief priests tied Jesus up, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate." It's on this day that we're introduced to Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor of Judea for about 10 years. And believe me, this was not exactly a dream assignment for Pilate. Pilate didn't like the Jews, and the Jews didn't like him. Pilate knew how much the Jews longed for independence, and he also knew how Rome ruled its subject with an iron fist. And the worst time of all for Pilate professionally was events like Passover. Multitudes of Jews would gather for the annual celebration, traveling from all over. The whole event celebrated their deliverance from Egypt many centuries earlier. So guess what they always talked and dreamed about? A Messiah who would come and deliver them once again. The best Pilate could do during the Passover week was just to hope to keep things quiet and peaceful and make sure there were no uprisings. Verse 2 says, they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation, opposing the payment of taxes to Caesar and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Well, when the religious leaders came to Pilate's house that Friday morning and all their talk about Jesus being an evildoer really meant nothing to him. He saw it as a petty Jewish squabble. The only thing he really heard was the last part. He's saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. It's the last thing Pilate needed. Pilate was an experienced politician, and he saw right through the smokescreen. He knew that it was a sham trial, but he also could not afford another problem in Israel. Really, he just needed the whole thing to go away. So Pilate does his best to remove himself from the situation. He questions him and comes back to the chief priests and crowd. He says, "I find no grounds for charging this man." It's at this point he tries to remove himself from the situation. The religious leaders may consider blasphemy a capital offense, but Pilate could care less. He wasn't a religious man. This is a petty argument. That's why he says, "You take him and judge him according to your law." Of course, that won't get them what they want because it's not legal for us to put anyone to death. Pilate sees they're not going to give up on this, and he knows he's got a problem on his hands. Now they're bringing up everything they can think of. He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea and Galilee, and when he heard Galilee, he thought he'd found another loophole. That's not my jurisdiction. So he sends Jesus to Herod. Herod was one of the sons of Herod the Great. He's the one who puts John the Baptist's head on a platter. This madman peppers Jesus with questions, and he wants a performance. He mocks the Son of God and treats him cruelly. But Herod could not find a basis for charges either. So he just sends him right back to Pilate. Pilate was the consummate, unprincipled politician. He wasn't driven by conviction or creed. He simply wants to stay in power. And so he reads the situation perfectly. He understands it's nothing more than a lynch mob, but he lacked the guts to challenge it. So Pilate decides to have Jesus scourged, thinking that he'll look so pitiful that maybe that'll satisfy the religious leaders. Again, a scourging literally caused some people to die during the scourging. So the religious leaders, they do it, but they're not buying it. They're determined to put Jesus to death. And Pilate had the authority, and they put him on the hot seat because they need him to carry out their evil plan. Finally, Pilate's exasperated. The more he interacts with Jesus, the more he's convinced of his innocence. Even his wife gets into the act as she gets in his ear warning him to have nothing to do with this righteous man because of a terrible dream she's had. Now, Pilate isn't religious, but he is superstitious. That's why he asked Jesus a series of questions from John chapter 19, verses 8 through 11. Where do you come from? And don't you realize I have the power to free you or crucify you? And finally, he famously asked Jesus, "What is truth?" Well, he finally comes up with a last-ditch effort to wiggle out of this. He offers them a choice between Barabbas, public enemy number one, and Jesus. In his mind, Pilate's thinking, surely they'll pick Jesus over Barabbas. But incredibly, we read this chilling exchange in Matthew 27, verse 21. "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" "Barabbas." "What should I do then with Jesus, who is called the Christ?" And they all answered, "Crucify him." Why? What has he done wrong? But they kept shouting all the more, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And the more he tried to release him, the more the crowd demanded Christ's crucifixion. So verse 24 says, when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but a riot was starting, instead he took some water and he washed his hands in front of the crowd and said, "I'm innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." In the end, Pilate was unwilling to deliver a verdict in the matter. He tries to wash his hands of the situation, but he can't. Like it or not, he's made his decision. And you know the same is true for us? We can't remain neutral with regard to Jesus. We're either for him or we're against him. Pilate reminds us that no one can think about Jesus forever. There comes a time when a decision must be made. An indecision is really a no decision. As Warren Wiersbe once said, every decision Pilate made forced him to make another decision until he was the prisoner of his own evasion. And we'll sign off here and pick up with another episode later on this Good Friday.